Hello, guys and gals, me, Mutahar. It's one late night, ladies and gentlemen, and boy, oh boy, there's a piece of software that apparently a million Windows users downloaded to switch off of good old Windows. Now, I've seen this mentioned a fair bit of time, something known as Zorin OS. I'm pretty sure some of you all have heard of it, and today I wanted to kind of talk about this, ladies and gentlemen, because I mentioned it a little bit in the past, but, I've been on this kick where I've been a Linux guy for like 6 years, and, Windows has never had the worst reputation in the public that it has had for a while now. Microsoft is too busy making you talk to your computer, maybe interact with it agentically. Some of us just want a computer where we can just interact. We want it less bloated. And that's pretty much all it comes down to. So for instance, this is Zorin OS, and they've apparently said that 1 million downloads of this system had happened, and a lot of it came from the fact that Windows 10 is dead. For a lot of people, moving up to Windows 11 means either purchasing some new hardware, enabling a more bloated system, or really, at the end of the day, giving up more of their privacy than they're comfortable with, right? I want to start off by saying I don't really care what you use. If you're a Mac guy, great. If you're a FreeBSD guy, sure. If you're a Linux dude, awesome. If you're a Windows person, congratulations. Just use what works for you. The reason I make these videos is because, honestly, I feel that there's a market of people that are interested in content like this. And then, to be fair with you, a lot of it just comes from me wanting to showcase something that I'm very passionately into. I like talking about free and open source stuff. I like sharing projects with you, so on and so forth. So ultimately, this is Zorin OS. Now, I don't personally use this, and the reason why I don't use this is because I use something known as OS. This is the best Linux distribution, hands down, and you can modify all of these things to your heart's content. For instance, my OS looks like Windows goddamn Vista, because I love me Windows Vista, ladies and gentlemen. I got that whole start option. I got everything right over here. My user interface looks pretty damn close, and that's all because you can theme Linux to your heart's content, okay? Some people make it look really fancy. Some people just love the Windows aesthetic like me, Windows Vista, and I make it look like that. But ultimately, under the hood, it is OS, which at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, is by far the most popular distribution that you can get. Now, there's other stuff like Linux Mint, which I've talked about before, which is great for people that want to switch over without being overwhelmed by technical complexities, okay? It's as easy to use as Windows or Mac. You don't even need to open up the terminal to do anything crazy for the most part. Now, Zorin OS's website looks pretty nice, pretty clean. For the most part, they've brought up a lot of endorsements from Forbes. They've brought up familiar desktops that all of you are apparently pretty damn used to. They advertise that it's super fast because ultimately it's just Linux for the most part, and Linux is definitely more lightweight than Windows, and for the most part, I would say even Mac OS, even though Mac OS is just picture perfect, and that's mostly because Apple controls almost everything. Reviving your old PC. If your computer can't support Windows 11, slap some Zorin OS and you're pretty damn good. For companies like Microsoft that talk a whole lot about carbon fucking neutrality and getting rid of e-waste, well, they're sure as hell creating a whole lot of e-waste with their most recent software updates. But of course, they talk about the fact that they're reliable. It's built on the same open source stuff that powers the New York Stock Exchange and computers on the International Space Station. So, the old Linux kernel itself, I would imagine, right? Secure. So it's apparently resistant to PC viruses and malware. Now, again, it's not that it's resistant, it's because you're using Linux, and most hackers are not writing fucking malware for Linux operating systems as much as they are with Windows. They also say that they don't collect personal data, so advertisers and government can't spy on your activity. It's crazy that we have to install software like operating systems that have to advertise this shit as a fucking feature. What should be a given is just a feature now. So then they start mentioning that, yeah, you want to play video games? Gosh darn lootly, you can play it on Steam, Lutris, Epic, itch.io, and GOG. And then, of course, they've got mobile app connections, dual booting. So, for instance, if you just also need to use Windows, you can dual boot as well, which their installer will pretty much guide you through, and yada, yada, yada. Now, one thing that I don't kind of like about the system is the fact that they do sort of sell a $78 version. Now, this is a license you can buy to get access to more premium layouts, which we'll get to. They've given you a whole bunch of professional grade suite applications. And again, all of these are applications that you can download for free. For instance, on Zorin OS, instead of getting the Office suite as they pretty much brought up to you, you can download LibreOffice for yourself on most Linux distributions, in fact, not all. So yeah, a lot of the professional grade software that they're talking about are softwares that are free and open source. So for instance, things like Kdenlive, things like LibreOffice, a lot of stuff that you can that are free open source alternatives. They just apparently pre-install most of it for you, which is I guess why you're paying the $70 fee. I would not pay for this. I donate to Linux distributions that I use. I just don't consider Linux to be something that I would go out of my way to really pay for. Now the installation is quite simple. Burn it to a flash drive, put it into your system, install it using a very simple installation, which it's kind of crazy to me how installing Linux is a lot faster and quicker now than installing even Windows, or for that extension, even Mac. So once everything is installed, you get greeted to this nice little interface. You get greeted to this desktop. Now, I'm not a psychopathic person. I'm going to go down over here and enable dark mode. And wow, it even changes the wallpaper. That's crazy. So yeah, ultimately, this is Zorin OS right here, ladies and gentlemen. So what does it feel like? What is it like, Muda? How is it why are a million people downloading it? Well, to start off with, it's got very much a Windows styling to it, like the start menu matches. Everything that you could ever really need, even in the core edition, is pretty much installed from the get-go. So for instance, it's got your standard file managers over here, which again, super duper simple, super easy to use. And ultimately, it's got the Brave browser dropped into it. So if you want to use the Brave browser, well, this is the built-in browser. It's what I use, and ultimately, I think it's probably the best thing that you can bring to the party. For the most part, the user interface matches Windows right off the get-go. So you've got your standard X, minimize, maximize, yada, yada, yada. And of course, you've also got a software store. So what makes Linux super duper easy now for a lot of people is that instead of going to that, terminal and installing applications, for the most part, a lot of the applications that we're kind of used to, for instance, like let's say you want to get a video editor. Well, a video editor would probably be freely available underneath the software manager like this called Kdenlive, for instance, right? But let's say you want to get access to things like Discord. Well, it's as easy as looking up Discord, clicking on the actual Discord applications, and just dropping that big install button. You don't even need to make an account on like an app store for this. It just is downloaded right off the get-go. Steam, similar vibes right over here. So instantly you want to go to Steam, you want to load the app details, and then you can just install it as you would anything in a modern computer system to begin with. Now, on the graphics side, it's got, nothing. It's got LibreOffice Draw, image viewers. Internet-wise, it's got something called Remina, which allows you to connect to other Windows desktops. So for people that still need to connect to desktops for work reasons, you've got applications like that right here. You've got web apps. So for instance, if you use particular websites, you can actually make them applications right here. So for instance, let's say that you use something like Twitter, for instance, right? You can basically type in www.x.com, find an icon, and it'll actually fetch the icon for you, select it like this, and hit save. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, now you've simply added those web apps. Similar to how you would do it on like a Macintosh, you've got those similar applications dropped in over here. So all right, let's see. We've got all your office tools that a growing boy and girl needs. Okay, you've got all your sound tools, everything. You like burning CDs and DVDs? You've got applications built in just for that. System tools, you've got pretty much everything ready to go. You've also got, again, something that is interesting right over here. So you've got a few applications that are a little bit exclusive. We'll look into them piece by piece. Software updater. Oh, dude, that is simple. So you click on that, and ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that people are usually scared of is that terminal. Now, normally, when I used to start Linux, and, I started using Linux primarily, 6 years ago at this point. And it used to be back in the day, if you're on a Debian-based system, this is how you would upgrade your system. You would do sudo apt update, all right? It would actually ask you for your sudo password. And of course, it would get all of the package updates that you wanted. And of course, you do sudo apt upgrade. Now, if this seems really, really, really convoluted to you, that's one of the reasons that I think Linux has really been difficult for people to use. But forget the terminal for a second, okay? Throw that shit aside. Right over here, this is actually the standard update system. So again, it'll tell you exactly what you want, your security, your other updates, yada, yada, yada. And it's as simple as just hitting that good old install now. So this is about as simple as you're going to get when it comes to Linux distributions, right? Again, the goal here is to make it as simple as you would with Windows or Mac, something where people aren't opening up terminal shells that remind them of hacker movies from 1994, okay? Simple as that. You know, nobody is looking to hack the fucking Gibson when they're using their computer. This is the reason why Linux hasn't reached crazy popularity. A lot of it is because, you know, purchasing computers from the store, oftentimes you only have the Windows option. And you know, for the first time with companies like Zorin, for instance, they do actually partner with a lot of these companies like Framework, where you are able to purchase laptops fresh from these companies with Linux pre-installed from my understanding. And I think it's only going to be a matter before people kind of realize it's like, hey, listen, instead of paying for a Windows license, which I don't know who pays for a Windows license in today's day and age, there's always a none option that ends up giving you about up to $181 to $259 off your computer purchase. So you can put that money towards something more important like computer memory or storage space or processing speeds or graphics cards, something that is actually going to give you a boon and a benefit. Now, while Zorin is updating in the background, you don't need to worry about your computer giving a fucking blue screen that tells you update in progress. You can actually use your computer and do other things with it. So a couple of the other features that are introduced in this is first off, Zorin Appearance. Now, one of the reasons why I think this has gotten so much traction is that it does actually give you a lot of popular layouts. Now, these are all the free versions, not the paid for versions that you've seen in the upgrade to the Pro. And I'm not going to upgrade to the Pro. I don't really think that I should be paying $77 for really them to pre-download free software for me and to give me some more Windows-friendly desktop layouts, okay? But what they do give you right off the bat is something that resembles closer. So this layout does actually resemble Windows a little bit more appropriately than, you know, I've ever seen before. And of course, ultimately, if you're a Windows 11 user, you can have the taskbar right here. No need to pay them for it. No need to get a licensed activated version. You can just modify this shit yourself. It's crazy how even in unactivated Windows, you can't even do something as simple as move the taskbar layouts without fucking keygenning the system. And then, of course, if you're somebody that is a Mac user, you have a more traditional Mac-style interface. But I'm going to stick with the original one because really that's all that matters. You've got the ability to change around colors, if you will, too, which ultimately I think the visual style of this is a lot better than most Linux distributions that I've seen. It actually just works super duper snappy, super great. Now, ironically, the other thing that people are really interested in is something like Windows application support. So for instance, a lot of people that want to use Windows applications underneath their operating system like Linux typically need a translation layer. So something like Wine, for instance, so on and so forth. So they've made it look incredibly easy, apparently. So with this little quick installation from their servers, you then turn your system into a Windows application supported system. So let's install it and just give it my, sudo password and let it deal with it, okay? So this is enabling simple Windows app support. Now, how simple is it? Let's actually see, because I think this might be a big make it or break it for someone. So, for instance, to test the Windows support, and I don't know if this will work or not, but I want to show you the actual experience of somebody who's like using this for the first time. There's this program called Affinity, which is supposed to be like this crazy alternative to like Photoshop that is actually completely 100% free. The unfortunate part is it's not there for Linux. It's only for Mac and Windows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the Windows version of this application and see if it works underneath this platform right here. So we're going to install Windows App Support, see if it supports this as easy as they're saying, if it's as simple as possible, and if it is, then maybe for some of you guys who are using those Windows exclusive softwares, might not be a bad option. So something that I find is really interesting with Zorin OS is that when you're installing applications for Windows, like for instance, this is FL Studio. I downloaded the trial, and the moment I started running this, it actually told me that, hey, there's actually an alternative that you can install instead of this. Now, again, you can install the Windows App Support, which we're doing right now, but you can also just install the alternative. I'm glad that they're telling you that there's alternative software that exists in this list. So for instance, it's as simple as double clicking over here and it will actually install the Windows software. So we should be seeing the setup fire up real quickly. For instance, some stuff like Affinity, which we just downloaded, comes in MSIX format, which again doesn't jive well with the actual default options. So you can just do right click, open with, and of course scroll down to where you see install Windows application. So again, you can even set it so that anytime you download similar apps, it just goes through this route. So hit open and let it go. So if it says if you want to run Affinity, it's an unknown Windows application, and of course just hit run anyways. So it does give you warnings, so you don't just run things for no reason. And of course, that fails to actually function. It's giving me file not found. So I would expect that, but if we just go to bottles, for instance, right over here, the actual application, maybe we get better results with this. So with bottles, what you can do is you can make individual sort of containers, and this is something that I've shown you in like Linux Mint as well too. It's a very simple way for you to get things going. It's actually setting it up for me. So the actual experience is pretty much like what I'm showing you here. So give it 1 second, and of course, once it says it's all ready, let's start using them bottles. So that little plus button up here, and we'll call this, I guess, Affinity. See if it works. Now, of course, you can see that it has multiple options like applications, gaming, and custom. It's just an application. We'll keep it running on Soda 9.0-1. Bottle directory, we'll, I guess, keep it to the default or, whatever it is. Hit create. So at this moment in time, it's going to make the bottle, which it only needs to do really once. And then we should hopefully be able to run this software underneath this situation, underneath the system. All right, so now once you're in your bottle over here, you can go to the Bottles tab, click Affinity, and now you should be able to launch an executable file. You could probably even drag and drop this thing in here, so... but we'll just go with the standard, we'll just go with the run executable file. So we'll go to downloads and, oh, wait, not supported. Let's just do Affinity. So it's loading up file not found, file not found. So yeah, sometimes things just do not work. But let's try installing FL Studio. Maybe that'll work, right? So again, let's say you didn't want to use something like bottles for the most part, right? What if you just wanted to launch it like a normal Windows installation? Well, just double click, hit run anyways, and it should pop it up as if it was Windows. So again, your mileage may vary, and the reason I'm showing you the mess ups here is because I want to give you guys an accurate view of what these systems look like, not the picture perfect stuff, okay? So again, the Windows installation looks pretty damn simple. Again, just install, and maybe FL Studio will work, even though I don't know if it will. I think it might though, because its compatibility is pretty damn good. You can check the Wine compatibility list to see what works and what doesn't, but here it is, it's just installing like a standard Windows application anyways. So for the most part, if your application is supported, you might not even know what you're running. It might just be entirely seamless for you. All right, so here it is. It's got the installation completely done. Go next, finish that. And of course, it's even got a desktop little shortcut for it as well built in, as you would expect with Windows. And it says, it's not trusted, by the way. So to enable launching, right-click, then enable allow launching. So right-click there. And allow launch, all right? So it's actually, it goes through a fair bit of security, I would say, too. I actually do kind of appreciate that. It almost feels like I'm using a fucking MacBook to start off with. But again, we're launching the application over here. Let's see. Okay, it's actually firing up. Now, granted, this is under a virtual machine, so there's a lack of GPU acceleration over here, but it seems like everything is launching up. I'm seeing the splash graphic. Hopefully, I should... Okay, I actually do see the actual hardware over here, and of course it's registering the various tools like Pipewire, for instance, and of course in the background I actually see the application functioning. One thing that is failing is obviously FL Studio is failing to respond, and I think it's not necessarily anything to do with the application failing. It might have more to do with the fact that I'm running this under a virtual machine, which doesn't exactly make productivity software run super duper well. Now, if you had more simpler applications, sure, things would work. Maybe something like a small game, but again, a lot of software that you probably use on Windows is at least feature complete for the most part in general cases for Linux as well too. So ultimately, it is a matter of time before, a bunch of other software solutions end up making their way over. But yeah, for the most part, this is Zorin OS, ladies and gentlemen. And there's not really much else for me to talk about other than, yeah, it's a pretty solid, replacement to Windows. It's a pretty solid alternative. Ultimately, in the end, it's freely available. And if you do want to pay for the professional version, it's $77, which is still cheaper than the cheapest Windows upgrade. Now, the thing is, it's really up to you if you want to use something like this. I feel like the simplicity kind of really matters a lot for people. But then again, most operating systems under the Linux banner, at least the popular ones, are kind of built for people to use them in the GUI manner, right? No real need to have terminals or crazy things. But if you really need something super duper simple, I don't think there's probably much better than this option. That said, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.